audience this evening and also everyone who is watching from home. I'm going to go a little bit off script, off agenda this evening, or precede the agenda, because, last Saturday, Santa Cruz County lost one of its most illustrious native sons, our district attorney, Bob Lee. I wanted to just take a minute to acknowledge Bob as being in the district attorney's office since 1988. He was elected as the district attorney in 2002, and he has always been a very passionate protector of victims' rights, a strong prosecutor, but it's also worked as hard to prevent crimes as well as to prosecute them. And he was a great lawyer as well, and so he is going to be greatly missed in our criminal justice system here in Santa Cruz County. But I also want to add that he was a friend to Capitola. He came when Chief Ely was the part of setting up the Elder Care Task Force. Bob came to many of those meetings. And in spite of his position and stature, he was also a gentleman, always professional, always friendly, and a compassionate, caring individual. So I would like to ask all of you to join me in a moment of silence in tribute to District Attorney Bob Lee. Thank you, everyone. I also want to extend, our well wishes and comforts to the family members, to all the staff at the county building, and particularly the district attorney's office who may be missing Bob's presence. I would like to dedicate this meeting tonight and have the record reflect that this meeting is being held in honor of the District Attorney Bob Lee. I want to announce that there will be a public memorial service this Saturday, October 25th at 11 a.m. at the Twin Lakes Church in Aptos. And there is a Bob Lee Memorial Fund for victims, which is being established that anyone would like to donate to, and you may send that in care of the Santa Cruz County District Attorney's Office. So thank you, everyone. And I just, want to thank you. And I also, Bob Lee, I mentioned that he was a friend of Capitola, but, he played a lot of basketball at the Jade Street Park. And I would think it would be fitting as maybe the future council would consider, having some sort of recognition there in honor of that event. So with that, let's do a roll call, Liz.
Council members Harlan.
Here.
Norton.
Here.
Potter.
Here.
Termini.
Here.
And Mayor Story.
Here. And I'd like to ask Vice Mayor and Council Member Dennis Norton to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Tonight we have 3 presentations. The first is a presentation regarding the Government Finance Officers Association Excellence Award. It's referred to as the GFOA Award, and we have a representative here in the audience who is going to present the award here this evening. And maybe I'll ask the city manager to also join me up front to receive this award. Jesse, the camera is right there. So why don't, here, come over here. And I think, yes, it's on.
All right, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. As you had mentioned, my name is Jesse Takahashi, and I'm the finance director from neighboring city over the hill, city of Campbell. I'm also the president-elect for the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, which is our statewide organization for finance officers. But tonight, I'm also here representing the government finance officers of the United States, which is the national organization for government finance officers. And so as a representative of this organization, I am really here to recognize the City of Capitola and their staff for its award of the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Excellence in Financial Reporting for not 1 but 2 years. Fiscal 2012 was the first year that this fine city received this award for its financial statements, as well as the fiscal 2013. So really, I'm here for 2 years' worth of awards. Before I present the award, I would like to just give a brief background to you as to what the purpose of and sort of the background of the award program is. So in 1945, the GFOA established this award program as a means to help state and local governments move beyond the minimum requirements of financial reporting. So a very important thing in our field. And to prepare more comprehensive annual financial reports that go beyond this minimum standards of reporting as established in the government profession. The other purpose is to help reward or to give an award to those entities that were very successful in achieving this goal. And I wanted to just note that the goal is not to assess the financial health of a particular organization, but it really is meant to give the public and those users the information that they need to do so themselves by promoting an easily readable and an efficiently organized document. And that's what the City of Capitola has done for the past 2 years. You should be very proud of the work and effort. So the reports that are submitted to this program are reviewed by a selected members of the professional staff of GFOA, as well as members of a special review committee, which comprise individuals with various expertise in the field of public accounting, independent auditors, academics, and other finance professionals. And this award represents the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental financial reporting for a government and its management. So that being said, at this time, I take great pleasure in presenting this Certificate of Achievement, and I'm going to be a little tricky here since I have a mic in one hand.
I'll take the mic.
Yes. And let me go ahead and present the certificate, first of all, to the city, the mayor, and to staff.
I think it would be most appropriate, Jesse, if you presented the certificate to Tori and Jamie for their work in achieving this excellence in accounting award, as well as the plaque.
Yeah. And so this is also the plaque that can hang up on the wall, and it actually has spaces for future awards. So this is hopefully just the start of something that will continue for many years to come. So congratulations again on your achievement.
Thank you, Jesse.
Well, I just want to say quickly, as mayor, I'm very proud of the staff for achieving this excellence in financial accounting. There's nothing more important toward public accountability than having comprehensive, accurate, and timely accounting reports. And I think a lot of times we don't really appreciate that, as they're working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that that's done. But it's a difficult job, but it's an extremely important job. And that is what gives the public confidence in what goes on in their, in their local government. So thank you very much. And Tori, I'll give you the microphone if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Jesse, for coming down. On behalf of the Finance Department, we're very excited to receive this award. While we've received the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers Award, this is a whole new level for us. And I'd like to acknowledge the Finance Department staff, Lonnie Wagner, who is our accountant/analyst. She works tirelessly on the budget as well as CAFR. She's responsible for making the cash flow presentations that you see, as well as working on the RDA unwinding. Also, Linda Banco, she's our disbursements technician, our accounting technician. She handles all the payroll and the accounts payable. And Helen Marchese, who receipts all of our revenue in, as well as handles our bank rec and our business license program. And we're very excited to receive this, and we're looking forward to hanging it up.
I'll keep my comments brief, but I really want to acknowledge Tori for this. I think this is a really a real testament to the dedication and work that you put in for our city. The quality of the documents that you've been producing for the last couple of years here has been unquestionably at the highest level. I think that the new budgets are so readable, so easy for people to understand. I don't know how many other people know how many hours you put in here at the city, but from my bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for everything you do around here. It's a real help. Thank you.
And Jesse, finally, thank you for coming over from the sister city of Campbell, and come over more often. Well, next we'll move on to another presentation, and I would like to ask Mark Monte if he will step up to the front. Mark, I want to say, first of all, awesome fireworks show. You know, that was... Could you work on the finale, though? Make it a little bit more exciting? Yes, right. Well, we want to, and this just so happened to coincide with the fireworks that we had recently here in Capitola, but the Monte Foundation has had their 20th year anniversary. It's the Rudolph Monte Foundation, named after Mark's father. They established this 20 years ago to help support education in our community, education facilities, and athletics here in Santa Cruz County. Over those years, they have contributed over $4 million toward the local schools. So that's tremendous, Mark. And I want to acknowledge that that Mark has kind of come full circle because I understand that when he was a young boy, he used to come to Capitola and see the Capitola fireworks when we had them here on the July the 3rd. And he then went on to start the Monte fireworks over in Seacliff, and now he's come full circle back in Capitola, back home again, right? And I just, after seeing those fireworks recently, I am just hoping that we will be able to establish that as an annual event here in Capitola, and that the community and the businesses are able to embrace it. And I also want to let everyone know that the Monte Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and it is a way, and if you want to help contribute to local, our kids, local education and athletics, go onto their website. So with that, Mark, I know I didn't read this proclamation. I'm not going to. I think I covered all the points in it, but I did want to just conclude by saying that I, Sam Story, Mayor of the City of Capitola, and the entire City Council commends the Rudolph Monte Foundation for its 20 years of service to the people of Santa Cruz County and its commitment to the children of the city of Capitola. The city thanks you for the most spectacular grand finale ever seen in this county. So there you go, Mark. My honor and privilege to be able to do that. Do you want to maybe say a few words?
I just want to thank the city of Capitola for letting me bring back light to Santa Cruz County again. I always say it's the bringer of light. And we lit up that sky that night with that finale. You could see it all over Monterey Bay. So thank you for allowing me to bring the show back to Santa Cruz County. Thank you.
And I do want to add, before you go, Mark, you know, it wasn't all just about flash and sound, but the money raised through that fireworks display is going to go toward the skate park that we're building at McGregor Park. $50,000 being contributed by the Monte Foundation. So.
Next year, yeah? Does he want to commit to next year now?
Yeah, I'm in. I think he did already. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, we go from one Mark to another Mark. Maybe it is now my honor, and I won't be as so informal, but I want to thank and introduce our local Assembly member, Mark Stone, who's here to give us a legislative update. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here and speaking to us this evening.
Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here and continue the conversation, give you a little update about what happened this last legislative year. As you know, we're in session from January through the end of August and into September sometimes, but happy to be in the district now and be able to update you. So, Mr. Mayor and Council and staff, it was, I think, a good year, a very good year from the state's standpoint. We had a balanced budget, an on-time budget, and for the third year in a row now, and it has probably been 30-plus years since that was true. And what marked this year specifically were the amount of revenues that we received at the state and didn't spend. We're starting to build a rainy day fund, build up the reserves, pay down California's debt, and address some of the long-term liabilities that have been accruing over the last number of years. That was the hallmark of the governor, and at least in the Assembly, when we put our budget priorities together over the last year, we wanted to make sure that we were investing in California in the way that we needed to. And you saw investments in education, some investments in the human services side, but also this notion that we need not spend all the money that we're getting in, save it for a rainy day, if you will. And there is a ballot measure that is on everybody's ballot. I'm not here to campaign for that, but to make sure that I explain a little bit of what it was about, because this year's budget was built on the notion of that rainy day fund. And the purpose of it will be to take excess revenues in certain categories and say that those cannot be spent. And it's a constitutional amendment, so future legislatures, future governors would not be able to spend that money. It is saved for reserves, it is saved for paying down debt, and for addressing long-term liabilities. The notion is to smooth out the ups and downs of the state revenues. So if we do get into the depths of recession like we saw, and we're likely to again, at least to some extent, we're hopefully not hitting cities and counties as hard as we have in the past. And that is something that we've been paying attention to, as well as trying to address some of the tools that have been taken away from cities and counties, like redevelopment agencies. We weren't very successful in this last year in getting back tools to cities to address housing needs and other things that I know that you're struggling with. But we're continuing those conversations. And Tony Atkins, who is the speaker for the next 2 years in the Assembly, is very, very interested in housing. So I'm hoping we can broaden that conversation and do things like affordable housing, transitional housing, that we need so desperately here in Santa Cruz County, and I know the cities and the counties are very, very engaged in. Other highlights that we did this year, we have a water bond that was a 2-year process. We started the conversation early in 2013, had a number of hearings throughout the state, including in Seaside. the chair of the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee, whose bill it was, Anthony Rendon, was kind enough on some urging to come to the Central Coast. So much of the water bond centers around the California Water Project, Central Valley, Southern California, and other needs that the Central Coast often gets left out of those conversations. The good news is that we were not left out of the conversations. The amounts of money and the categories in the bond, at least most of them, will be monies that we'll be pretty competitive for. Either the money that's assigned to the Central Coast. In the last minute negotiations, we got more money put into the pots that are assigned to the Central Coast, which sounds good, except recognize that in the water bonds, Central Coast is San Mateo County through Ventura County. Big chunk of the coast of California. Not that much dollars given the number of jurisdictions that represents. But because our area has been having the conversations and the fights over water that we've had over the last 10, 20 years or longer, we're better placed, I think, to compete for the statewide dollars coming out of that water bond as well. So if the voters pass it, the State Water Board will be coming up with regulations, and if they follow the pattern of previous regulations, Prop 50, Prop 42, again, I think we'll be very competitive and be able to draw down a little bit more than our fair share of bond money to address the projects that we have. It's about a $7.5 billion bond. The polling for it showed that voters in California were looking for something between 6 and 8 billion, so we were kind of pushing the top end of that. But so far, from what I've seen, polling looks pretty good. 2.7 billion of the bond is slated for surface storage. It says surface storage and groundwater storage, but it's really aimed at 3 specific projects in the Central Valley that are surface storage projects, new dams in the Central Valley. That is a controversial piece. Don't know what the impact of that will be on the bond vote that is coming up. It is the first time that all Californians are being asked to pay for new surface storage projects. Previously, it had been federal money, and users of that water, of the dam, water coming out of the dam, were the ones who had paid for that before. So this is a little departure for California. That's what makes it a little bit controversial. But I think we're well placed around the Monterey Bay, Santa Cruz County, to be able to draw down some of that money. We also put in place groundwater policy, first time in California's history. In fact, we are the last state, the last western state, to have groundwater policy in California. That was not as easy to get through the legislature. The water bond went through fairly easily, just given the politics of it. The groundwater policy was very close. It was a heavy lift, as they say, getting it through the legislature. And in spite of the rhetoric, I'll explain a little bit about what it does. There's some concern that it is the state imposing on groundwater basins what to do and how to do to get their basin into compliance, get their basin sustainable. It is not. The state didn't do a lot of defining of groundwater basins, didn't do a lot of defining of what the governance is. That'll have to be figured out locally. And it will be up to the local jurisdictions for each impacted groundwater basin to decide what that sustainability means, how it's going to be sustainable for the long term, negotiate with the State Water Board about what that means. But a lot of it is self-determination, and the timelines are very long to get groundwater basins in compliance. For us, again, we have been working in Santa Cruz County, especially for a long time, on groundwater, and most of the basins in this county are already pretty close to compliance. There's a lot of work to be done. Don't mistake that. There's a lot of work to be done. But we are much closer than most other groundwater basins, impacted groundwater basins in California. So we will see less of that impact because I think we'll be able to put together those sustainability plans fairly readily over these periods of time and be a leader in the state of California. We do have that opportunity. There's no nexus between the bond money and the groundwater programs, but it should play well if we're applying for groundwater money out of the, or for water money out of the bonds, if we have our act together, so to speak. I get to chide my colleagues in the legislature that the groundwater policy is really the state catching up with us here in Santa Cruz County. They don't appreciate that, but it's a little bit fun. But it also speaks to the amount of work that's been done locally in Santa Cruz County on groundwater. A lot of the other highlights, I know that you watched with great interest, the plastic bag ordinance that was passed by the state. We now will have, come January 1, a statewide ordinance or a statewide plastic bag ban. It is not as complete. It is not as strong as what you have. what Santa Cruz County has. Most of the cities in Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, most of the cities around the Monterey Bay have much stronger ordinances that will have deeper impact. The work that was done that I had to do on that bond was to make sure that it did not impede the work that was being done locally. And it doesn't. And in fact, it leaves local jurisdictions open to regulate plastic bags with respect to stores that are not covered by the state ban. So it does leave the door open. We've already covered that ground locally. There's not that much more work that needs to get done. But it does not preempt the local ordinances. It leaves those intact and gives some flexibility for other jurisdictions who want to do the same thing. But I can't underscore enough how significant it is for the state of California to have passed that ban. We were being watched worldwide. And hopefully other countries, other states, other jurisdictions around the world will be saying, well, if California can do it, maybe it's time we have the same conversation. And it opens up the conversation about plastic ocean pollution. Other bills in the legislature around environmental bills that I've been involved with trying to reduce plastic ocean pollution weren't quite so successful, but I see bills that aren't successful as a conversation, a continuing conversation with my colleagues up there, and we will continue to do that. The other areas that I'm very, very involved in, human services side, I had the honor of chairing the Human Services Committee in the Assembly for the last 2 years. With the new session starting early December, 1st of January, our committees will be shuffled around. Don't know what my committee assignments will be. I've asked pretty much the same suite, so hopefully I'll be able to work in the same policy areas that I had over the last 2 years. Did a lot of work in the human services arena, both for foster kids, for CalWORKs recipients, CalFresh recipients, making the systems function better. For example, the electronic benefits cards that CalWORKs recipients get, that's how they then go take advantage of those programs. Every year, $20 million of benefits money was going to bank fees. And that was not constructive. It was not money put to the use of the people who need that money. So I did get a bill through that cleaned that up as we renegotiate with the vendor and provides a lot more education for EBT card holders as well as reduces the bank fee so that more money can get to the people who need it. I did a number of bills along that line, just making the systems work more efficiently and more effectively at the state level. The other conversation I've been deeply involved in is prison reform. And again, in Santa Cruz County, we've implemented the prison realignment. What is called AB 109 was passed a number of years ago. When I was still on the Board of Supervisors, I was part of the county's implementation of that. And in Santa Cruz County, we are exemplary vis-a-vis a lot of other counties in the state of California. The RISE program and GEMA program here are very excellent programs that are reducing recidivism, reducing the cost of incarceration, and at the same time, we're seeing our crime rates go down and not increase at all because of that realignment of prisoners down to our local level and having to manage them at the local level. It would be nice to be able to replicate some of that at the state level, where the state is under, and what led to the prison realignment was the federal lawsuit against the state of California, where the federal courts determined that our prison system was in fact inhumane and overcrowded. We don't have any higher crime rates in the state of California vis-a-vis other states, but we have a much, much higher incarceration rate than they do. And with recidivism rates statewide running almost 70%, there's a lot of work that we have left to do. So those are some of the areas that I've been involved in the legislature. Hope to continue to work in that area. We are happy to report, and I know I keep saying this, and people just keep saying, well, you know, wait a year, make sure that you're still getting along, but we are getting along much better in Sacramento than has happened in a long time. Part of it is the group that I came in with in 2012. We were elected, we were half of the body, and the term limit change gave us a little longer view. We have the possibility of being there for 12 years if the voters keep sending each of us back. And that's given us a little longer view. We are now using committees to do more oversight than had happened before, introducing fewer bills, and looking a lot longer at implementation of policies rather than just churning out bill after bill after bill. And we are working much, much better across the aisle than has ever happened or has happened in my recollection of working up in Sacramento. That notion, that ability to govern California, that ability to work across the aisle, to disagree, but disagree respectfully, have arguments on policy as opposed to personality, I think has far-reaching implications for the state of California and for governing California. I keep reporting on that, and I do get to come back and say we are still amongst ourselves talking about, we are proud of it, and we are keeping that notion going so that we are able to govern in a much more respectful way, which makes it possible to bring more people to the table in policy debates, bring more ideas to the table in policy debates, which makes for better policy across the board. So I think that's an exciting change in Sacramento right now. It's very, very different than Washington, where the deadlock is kind of the term of the land. We are getting along much better, even though there are 80 members of the Assembly, as you know, 40 members of the Senate. It's a lot of people to have to negotiate bills with. You get to count to 3. I have to count to 41, and then to 21, and then convince the governor to sign the bill. So it's a little more complicated process, but it's been interesting to be able to make a difference. I was recently named co-chair of the Legislative Environmental Caucus, so I'll be very much involved in environmental conversation next year, and I hope to continue the caucus that's looking at poverty and inequality. I was named co-chair of that a little over a year ago, and we're hoping, again, to continue that conversation and make that a permanent caucus within the legislature. But as everything shifts now into a new session, we'll have to see how all that works together. So that's a snapshot. Little bit of a nutshell of things that are going on in the state. I'm happy to answer your questions about policy areas that you're concerned about. And I will say that this is right now looking forward, putting together bill packages for next session. Bills can be introduced as early as December 1st, December 2nd, when we get sworn in, through January, probably into early February. I'm not sure what the bill introduction deadline is just yet. So if there are things that we can do to help out Capitola, let me know. This is a good time for us to have those conversations and look at potential legislation. That's what happened last year as we were working through it. I worked with the County of Santa Cruz and was able to get through and passed a little tax measure. Interestingly enough, the legislature allowed me to have that conversation, and the governor signed it, that allow counties to do what cities can do, and that is ask their constituents to raise the sales tax, to address infrastructure issues that they have, but it'll be just the unincorporated voters and just the unincorporated parts of the county. Current law is that when counties want to do it, they have to do it with all the cities, not just for the unincorporated areas. And counties like ours, where more people live in the unincorporated areas than live in the cities, and counties provide more city-type services, I think that's an important tool for counties to be able to have. And that came out of, well, my involvement with the Board of Supervisors, but also conversations with the county about the need for infrastructure improvements, roads, sewer, septic, things like that the county gets involved with. So it's a good time to be talking about legislation. And tonight, if you have ideas, if not, give me a call. And I'm very happy to consider what I can do and my office can do to help you out over the next 2-year session. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Yes, Stephanie?
Thank you for that measure for the county, because I know that was greatly needed. Years ago, I asked Supervisor Robbie Levy about business licenses, and why don't you raise the business license fee and things like that, to have more money to fix the roads. And she said, we're not allowed to issue business licenses, so we can't raise that fee because we don't even have a fee. So she said, she described the limited means that the counties have of raising funds for operations, because you have so many mandated programs and there's very little left for other services. So anyway, thank you for that. I of course would like to get rid of the state housing number, as most communities would, and so I think that it's seriously that if we can get the League of California Cities behind us, or CSAC or something, make it optional. If you can give us a number, and if people want to build that, let them build it. If they don't want to, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the water, roads, et cetera, schools, then don't make us do it. And it's just, we play these number games of trying to fit these numbers in. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. So that's...
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have explored that a little bit. It's a tough policy change, given what the state sort of feels its role is. But the longer we go on, and the more of us up there who have local government experience and be able to talk about those impacts, and as we talk more about housing and affordable housing and flexibility and tools for local governments to be able to do what you need to do, the RHNA numbers have to be a part of that conversation.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mark, for joining us this evening. Transportation, two
Yes.
issues. A big one in the county right now is the rail trail. It's just in its formulation stage, and they've established a rail trail plan. Is there a possibility of the state helping us in developing this? Capitola actually is a very big beneficiary of this when it goes into place.
Well, the way transportation funding comes down is through the Regional Transportation Commission. So it would need to be a part of the regional planning efforts. I'm not sure that there are state transportation dollars per se outside of those. Probably the best bet for that kind of help and that kind of planning would come out of cap and trade if we can get, I think, a better program with the cap and trade dollars. We tried a number of bills, and I had the bill that dealt with natural resources. What we tried to do with cap and trade was introduce this notion that we should be creating buckets, if you will. Natural resources bucket, transportation bucket would be key, and other buckets that are ongoing programs that the state would fund. We would look at every year what cap and trade revenues would be and decide how much to put in each bucket. But if we establish those programs, then local jurisdictions would have that sense of a permanent program and be able to plan a little bit ahead. Wouldn't always know when the dollars are going to come in, but that there will be dollars out there. And those are the kinds of things, because alternative transportation is key to helping us reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is what cap and trade dollars is all about, meeting the AB 32 goals. I think those kinds of programs would be very viable as cap and trade expenditures. Unfortunately, negotiating with the governor this last year, this year, next year, until we can get that notion of ongoing programs, we'll be just negotiating kinds of programs year after year after year. So it's going to change a lot, making it a little bit harder to plan. But those are the kinds of dollars, I think, that will be very flexible. And when fuels come under the cap, the transportation fuels come under the cap next year, there will be more revenues coming into the cap and trade funds that we need to turn around and invest in programs in California that help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions, help us recognize the impact of climate change and be able to deal with that. So we're going to continue to have those conversations. Outside the cap and trade money, which would be flexible, not a lot of transportation dollars that are not distributed through the regional transportation structure, RTPAs.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the 55% came up at the county. I know that that's an issue for the RTC here as well. Last year, there was proposed a measure that would go to the ballot that would reduce transportation ballot measures down to 55 from the 2/3. But the problem was there were a number of others, public safety and many others, that got introduced at the same time. They all got then put into a single bill, and that kind of died of its own weight. I think if we strategically look at categories like school bond funds, which now has a category that's allowed to be 55%, we can have a better conversation about the infrastructure pieces. It got too complicated. But that would be a better way for local jurisdictions to be able to have a conversation with their constituents and be able to raise the revenues appropriate for infrastructure and especially transportation. Don't know if that'll be introduced. I imagine it will be again this year, and we'll see how complicated it gets again.
Ed, Ned, Mike, Ed? On the transportation issue, and with the shift or emphasis on hybrid vehicles, all electric vehicles, and our dependence upon the gas tax,
right,
is there a conversation about shifting that model so that we have enough revenue to support our transportation infrastructure? And I wasn't quite sure if the cap and trade is a component of that. It doesn't sound like it is, but but we seem to be moving toward using less and less gas because of AB 32, but we're not dealing with the policy issues about how to fund our transportation. Is that conversation?
Yes, it is happening.
Yeah,
it is happening.
okay.
In fact, there was a bill that went through this year that was additional incentives to put more electric vehicles on the road. That bill did not address exactly that question, but that question comes up again and again and again. And as we talk about hydrogen vehicles, fuel cell vehicles, increasing the number of electric vehicles that are out there, more infrastructure for the fuel cell vehicles or for the electric vehicles, that's all well and good. But you're right, with higher mileage vehicles, hybrids, electric vehicles, people are not using the same amount of gas, and the way the gas tax structure is set up, those revenues are falling far short. There is talk about vehicle miles traveled, about any number of mechanisms to be able to recognize the impact. And one of the problems with the tax system in California is there's not always a logical nexus between the revenues and the expenditures. And transportation is one of those where the gas taxes and the taxes that are raised out of the transportation sector don't always get spent appropriately, or in this case, are diminishing over time. And we have to recognize the impact of electric vehicles as we electrify more and more, even buses, trucks, the heavier weight vehicles, that we have to come up with a structure that everybody is paying fairly for the infrastructure, for their impact on that infrastructure. No solutions just yet. It's definitely a part of the transportation conversation up there. We know we need to do some reform in that area. What it's going to be is still very much debated, but there is a recognition that we have to address that. With the California Council of Governments, CalCog, they're engaged in that, and a lot of the other transportation sectors are engaged in that conversation as well. So there is recognition, not any obvious solutions just yet.
Well, thank you, Assemblymember Stone, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and speak with us this evening. And we certainly appreciate your service, your effective representation
Thank you.
Of our locality and our small community here. And also, thanks for, just coming. And I know you've been doing this kind of regularly, and it really helps us stay connected to what's going on in our state legislature. So thank you for that. And with that, thank you for being here.
Congratulations on your financial award.
Thank you.
And thank you too, Mayor, for recognizing Bob Lee's service to the County of Santa Cruz. That was very appropriate. I think we're all struggling with that loss a little bit. It came up pretty suddenly.
I just felt, we could not let this meeting go. Unfortunately, it happened at a time when we couldn't actually agendize it formally. But I felt that, we needed to acknowledge that, sharing the pain of those who have lost that. We are all a part of that loss. And he was such a fabulous community servant. And I know, he's going to be greatly missed here.
He will be greatly missed.
So, okay.
Thank you. Congratulations. You do have a beautiful little city and have a very strong governance team. And I wish you well. And be back next year and continue the conversation. But in the meantime, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't forget about me up there in Sacramento. If there's anything that I can do to help with the city, whether it's legislative or working with the administrative departments, I'm absolutely willing and able to do that.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make,
just
I'd
a minute.
One small comment on his
hold on,
presentation.
please.
Sure.
We haven't gotten to public comments yet. There's a
Oh,
few
no,
other.
this is an agendized presentation. I have a right to speak as county council and other councils throughout the AMBAG area permit.
Could I get a ruling on that about whether or not he has the right to speak off agenda?
He had a right to request to speak before the presentation, but there is no right after it.
Well, we're going to have public comment here in about 5 minutes, okay?
In fact,
so,
I did ask the attorney about this earlier before.
Well, I'm going to exercise my prerogative as the mayor and is running this meeting. I'm going to ask you politely if you'll just wait 5 minutes until we get to the public comments portion of this meeting, okay? Otherwise, I view that you're speaking out of turn. If I let you do it, I'd have to let everyone else that wanted to also do it, okay? And that's disruptive to this meeting. And so would you please...
You force me against the law to talk about something that's not supposed to be oral communication. It's not supposed to be on the agenda. He was on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, the gentleman did ask me to speak about an item that was not on the agenda.
And he will have an opportunity to do that, but in the appropriate time, place, and manner. And so with that, I do want to cover the other items preceding public comment. let's have a report on closed session at this time.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Story, members of the City Council. There were 2 items on this evening's closed session. The first item was a matter of pending litigation. That was the matter of Klepfer versus the City of Capitola. The council received a report, but there was no reportable action taken. The second item was a claim of threatened litigation involving the Water Rock Construction Company that built the recently completed parking lot adjacent to City Hall. That item will be agendized for consideration on the consent calendar at the next meeting for considering rejection of that claim.
Thank you for that report. Additional materials, this is just a disclosure of additional materials that we have received here this evening. One of them is concerning item 2A presentation and concerning identifying the individual who presented the award. We also have a revised agenda report, staff report on item 9C, as well as we have a letter from Glenn Hanna concerning item 9C. So those are the additional materials. We'll go to additions and deletions to the agenda. Does staff have any requested additions or deletions? Seeing none, council members, additions or deletions? Seeing none, we'll handle the agenda in the form it's written. With that, now that brings us to public comment, and sir, you're welcome to come up now and address the council. And thank you for your patience.
Gary Richard Arnold. There's a pervasive lobbying power that extends to our community, and it's regarding an upcoming program at the Resource Center. There have been books called The Invisible Government, The Shadow Government, America's Secret Establishment, about a formal combine of media, oil, banks, unions, universities, and this includes both cabinet members of both the Republicans and the Democrats. It was a semi-secret establishment that was incorporated in 1921, and they were formed because the United States Senate put thumbs down on the League of Nations. So when the Second World War concluded, more than half the members that met in San Francisco were members of this Council on Foreign Relations to build a skeletal frame for a billionaire base for world government and world control. There they set up the United Nations and the World Bank. They set up their own opposition throughout the country, and they're also controlled various organizations, both left and right. You have Rick Warren of the Purpose Driven Church, member of the Council on Foreign Relations. You got Tony Romero of the ACLU, member of the Council on Foreign Relations. They represented a majority of the Project for a New American Century, which launched scores of color revolutions around the world, pushing policies towards a global government. At the Resource Center tomorrow night, and again, the Resource Center gets outside money. It's not coming from local people. Resource Center gets thousands of dollars from the Kellogg Foundation, who funded the first eugenics convention in 1912 and founded the Race Betterment Foundation and worked with Adolf Hitler. Tomorrow night, they're charging $8.50 for a person who says they're a team member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And what they want to do, the Resource Center has been a watering hole for many politicians in this area. What they want to do is predict and control what issues, whether there's civil rights or whether it comes to chemtrails or fluoride or the spy program that's in this county put in by the sheriff called Next Door. They don't touch those things. It makes it safe for Mark Stone, being on the Environmental Committee, not to have to address geoengineering or chemtrails. The lady that's speaking tomorrow night is from the Corbel Institute. His daughter was Madeleine Albright. He taught Condoleezza Rice. Both Albright and Rice were members of the Council on Foreign Relations and members of the Bilderberg Society. What happens is that this community has been turned over. The newspaper has been bought out by the Bilderberger Foundation, and the Moss Landing is owned by Blackstone, which is a Pete Peterson, member of the Bilderberger Society. Again, a lot of the legislation that's going on now is moving your authority to regional agencies in which they intend to use in a government emergency and eventually permanently. So please check in to keep your independence and honor the Constitution.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council this evening on items not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comments portion of our meeting. We'll go on to City Council, City Treasurer, staff comments. Does staff have any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I did want to make an announcement regarding a hearing tomorrow with the Metro Board of Directors. Tomorrow morning, the Metro Board of Directors is going to be receiving a status update regarding our efforts to work with the City of Capitola's efforts to work with Metro and the owners of the Capitola Mall to look at options to relocate the transit center. It is the same presentation that I'll be bringing to your council at our next meeting. I will be attending on behalf of the city, where the Metro Board will be getting the update on our progress. Just wanted to let everyone know the meeting starts at 9 o'clock in the Santa Cruz City Hall Council Chambers.
All right, thank you. Any other staff comments? This is City Treasurer is not here this evening. Council comments. Stephanie?
I wanted to have Mike introduce the new artwork in the chamber.
Oh my goodness, this is great new artwork, and it's by New Brighton Middle School. These are middle school students that were asked to draw commonplace items, and they're truly remarkable. I saw them, they were displayed at the New Brighton Middle School multi-use room last month, and they've come to us this month, and they're delightful.
I wonder if they're going to sell any of them.
They don't usually. I think parents have first dibs on all this. And we saw that the last time we brought the grade school stuff in. You couldn't have wrestled any of them out of any of them. Yeah, there were some great ones.
Yeah, because it'd be really nice if there was some way we could support the artists also and start a little Capitola City collection of art that we could have here when we don't have another art show that we have going. We had a presentation at the last meeting from the woman who is going to be setting up the Children's Museum at the mall. And they have a tentative opening date of November 1st, but they're still in construction, so I think it's a soft date. So if you hear that date and you go there on the 1st, it may be completed or may not.
It's changed to the 15th now.
Yeah, November
Okay,
15th
okay.
At the same time, 10:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's all I had.
Dennis?
Yes. The citizens or voters of Capitola were distributed this brochure this week here, and what it says Cops Voters Guide. And in two places it has a sheriff's badge in it. And what it's meant to do is represent that law enforcement is supporting this. The opposite is true. There's absolutely no law enforcement that forces this agenda or anything that is in this. It's embarrassing both to police departments, but also this is a type of politics that should not go on. And that when you get it in the mail, what it's telling you is that not one person in here is supported by a police agency here. They have intentionally deceived the public in this brochure.
Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed.
Oh, I'm good.
Two items. Number one, this Sunday, 2 o'clock, we're starting to line up at 1 o'clock behind City Hall for the annual Capitola Halloween Parade. Children of all ages, even the 50 and 60-year-old children, get dressed up and march down the middle of the street. And it's a great event, and it feels good, and we have 400 or 500 kids, and they invade the village. It's wonderful. Also, speaking of Art and Cultural Commission, we are working with the Santa Cruz County Symphony, and we are very close to an agreement with them to have a free family concert at New Brighton Middle School multi-use room. It will happen sometime in the late winter or early spring. We are also working on Bach on the Beach. That's a chamber group that will perform on our stage. These concerts both will be free to everyone, and we're trying to make the free family concert what they call a petting concert, where children get to sit amongst the musicians and sit with them and next to them, and it's really an enchanting and amazing event. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for those report outs and about the goings-on in Capitola. That will bring us now to the consent calendar. These are items that will be handled with one vote. There's just a couple of items, and this is just to approve the minutes of our October 9th meeting, and also to approve the check register of September 19th, the 26th, October 3rd, and October 10th. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull a consent agenda item? Seeing none, council members?
I would like to pull the consent agenda, please. Excuse me, the
Item
check
B,
register.
the check register, okay.
8B, please.
Dennis, did you want to just point something out or have a separate vote on it?
I'd like to pick a couple checks out if I can get some feedback on it, if I could. 78518, Metro Mobile Communications, $805.
78518 Metro Mobile. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, you know what it looks like? It looks like it's it was replacing the motorcycle helmet associated with for motorcycle officers. That includes the communication devices within the helmet that were damaged in an accident recently.
$805 for, okay, all right. Okay, Kimberly Horn Associates, number 78570, $9,450. It says professional services. That term scares me sometimes.
Kimberly Horn is doing the Safe Routes to School program for New Brighton Middle School, and that's payment for that. That is all grant-funded work.
So the funding is coming through us, Steve, and for that program then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll move the check register with the exception for me of the Santa Cruz Regional 911, 2 payments. Thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, so Dennis, your motion was to exclude.
Yeah, somebody else should make the motion. You make
yeah,
the motion.
we
Okay.
should probably have maybe 2 separate motions.
I'll move the check register except for the 2 items that Dennis mentioned.
Okay, I believe that's the same motion. So let's take a vote on that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So now that motion passes unanimously. I think now we need the motion
I'll move
on
that
the
we
check.
approve the other 2 items that are on the check register.
Right. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second on those 2 remaining items. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Opposed?
And one with, I'm sorry, strike that. We did have 1 no vote, and that was Dennis. Which will now bring us back. We still need a motion on item 9A, which are the minutes from the October
approval.
9th meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I don't think that was item 9A, Sam.
I'm sorry, strike, yeah.
That was
You-
8A.
You've thrown me off, Dennis.
I'm sorry.
That was item 8A that motion was on, and that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So now we'll move on to the general government, the public hearings for this evening. The first item is to consider awarding a contract to MG Creations Skate Park Construction in the amount not to exceed $50,000 to design and build the skate park portion of the McGregor Park and to review the conceptual design for the skate park design. The recommended action is to approve the contract and to provide direction concerning the design. So with that, we'll have a staff report. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, good evening. All right, welcome. So as you have so accurately stated, this is to consider the contract with MG Construction and then to also review the proposed design. So just to give an overview, here's an updated version of the skate park, bike park, and the dog park out at McGregor. So another little more background on how we got where we are today. In July of 2013, the City Council had directed staff to develop plans for a recreational facility out at McGregor. And in November, the Council authorized a multi-use recreational facility. In February 2014, the Planning Commission approved the permit for the entire park. And in April, the Council again approved the construction documents. And in May of 2014, of course, we had approval of the fireworks show with the commitment from the Monty Foundation to donate the funds for the skate park. In July of 2014, again, this item came before you with regards to awarding the contract to Earthworks Construction. And in September of 2014, The construction began on the park, so we are currently in construction. And council also approved during September, we brought the pump track design to you. And just recently in October, last week, we had a skate park design public meeting to discuss the design that I'm going to present to you this evening. So you can see the number of times that we have been bringing this forward to the council for discussion. So more specifically on the skate park, again, the budget's $50,000 with the commitment from the Monty Foundation for the entire $50,000. So that's what we have been working within. We did a request for proposal in August, and we had 3 firms respond. We utilized a committee, and we asked an outside member of the community to also participate in that committee to review the proposals. And we all agreed that we thought the best proposal to recommend to staff or to the council this evening was MG Creation Skate Park Construction. They're a local company, licensed contractor, 17 years of experience, and is familiar with the community. And I would like to, at the end of my presentation, introduce the owner, Mike Greenwald. This is the first of our design process that has been submitted. That was part of the proposal with which we were able to start making decision of who we wanted to select, was based on their initial design proposal. We took this design, this preliminary design, to the public workshop that was held last week for input. Here's another look again from another angle of the proposed design. And again, another angle. So at the meeting, we had a lot of discussion. What they centered around was more concrete elements, was a desire. Came up about a fencing around the skate park, whether or not to actually have the fencing. They discussed increased funding for more elements in the park. Other various types of design features. We had some mixed comments regarding bikes and scooters. I don't think that the group actually came to any kind of consensus of whether allowing bikes and scooters into the skate park. And again, location, as usual, came up as a discussion and a safe route to the park. So where that leads us today is to consider the contract first, approval of the contract. Then to revise the conceptual design based on the input from the October 16th workshop, and also consider holding another workshop based on those comments, possibly on November 3rd, to review some more input, provide more input, and then potentially on the 13th, bring to the City Council a consideration of the actual final design, which, similar to the bike park, we would need the council to approve the design in order to limit the city's exposure to liability. So that brings us to the conclusion. I want the opportunity to introduce Mike Greenwald. He is our proposed contractor who will be available to answer any questions that you might have regarding the design. I know there's several people here who also were present at the public workshop that probably have comments to contribute as well. So at this point, that concludes my presentation. And again, any questions I'm available for, and Mike is also available as well. Thank you.
Other questions? No? No questions? Okay.
I have just one follow-up, Mike, if you could. You did receive quite a bit of input at the workshop we had. Do you see it beneficial to have another one in a discussion of this after this meeting? Is that something that
I would
like
say
to see?
so.
Okay.
Yes. I thought there was maybe it was because of the ball game. There was a little bit of a small crowd, but I always think more discussion is better, and there's always room for improvement. So I would think that there would be.
Let's make sure the third isn't on a Giants game.
Right. Yeah.
It's up to the Giants.
It's over.
It'll be over by then.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. The staff report was that there's going to be a consideration of maybe putting in more elements into the design, and I think that's an appropriate course to go. I was just wondering what the additional costs would be to adding more elements. I mean, the contract that we're considering now for the elements that are shown here in this presentation. And so, yeah, I was wondering where could maybe we go with more elements?
Well, the way I could address it is the elements that are proposed there were some alterations that folks had discussed, and so you could swap out or add more if there were. It just depends on, I think, the more discussion that it generates. So possibly, maybe people don't want a half pipe in there, and that would break that. That's a very large expense, and maybe then they would do other smaller elements. So that's the type. Working within the $50,000 budget. At this point, we're not asking for anything more. It's what we can do and alter within that budget.
Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, yes, it could, like she's mentioned, it could be swap out this for 3 of those and that sort of thing.
Okay, so we're just talking about different elements, not necessarily additional elements.
I think that the comments that came from the public, which I wanted to share, were that there was a desire for more elements, but they also understood that there is a budget constraint.
Yeah.
And so some of the ideas also was modifying some of the existing elements that Mike has proposed as well.
Yeah. Okay. Dennis? Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, I remember correctly, you actually said that with what we have here, you would actually contribute another ramp into this fray. You mentioned that.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Okay. The other concept that was thrown out there is that even though we're not complete here, that it gives room for expansion. In other words,
right.
At any point you could add elements into this. Is that correct?
Yep, above ground elements for sure.
Above ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Fair.
Okay. Yeah, Mike.
I have a question for Mr. Condati. It's been brought to our attention that while we can be indemnified with a skate park with proper noticing, as all cities have, that going from a concrete park to a wood park exposes us to some liability if we fail to maintain the wooden ramps properly. Is that a true statement?
I do believe that failing to maintain a facility would be problematic in terms of attempting to rely upon the design immunity that is acquired by the City Council, having the design reviewed by an expert and then accepting the design.
And was it safe to assume, Mike, that because this is a wood ramp as well as the one that you're potentially going to let us use, a wood ramp, that there's some consistent maintenance that would need to keep going? I mean, we couldn't just build this and walk away for 5 years, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Mike. And actually, I think at this time I'll open it up to any other members of the public that would like to address the council on this agenda item.
Hi, Mayor, Council. My name's Tricia Proctor. I'm a resident of Capitola, a mother of 2 teenage skateboarding boys, and I'm a huge supporter of a skate park in Capitola, so I thank you for your efforts to try and bring a park here. However, I'm not a fan of McGregor. As I said before, that location is off-site, out of sight, extremely dangerous to get to on foot. And the element that is living out in the trees and shrub is just, it's unnerving. Based on the safety report generated by the Public Works, I'm very surprised and shocked that this location is still open for discussion. So based on that, the safety of our children, I am asking that we hold off and postpone any more discussion on a skate park at McGregor. I believe we and the Monty Foundation can do better for our children and the community by building a skate park in a safer location. Thank you.
Do you have any ideas for us? Because we're open to other ideas. This is the one we landed on.
Yeah, we've talked about it, a few times. I don't know if I want to exactly say that location until the rest of my homework is done.
Okay.
But I would love to bring it back prepared, but I'm just asking for a little bit more time and my sister-in-law and I would be more than happy. But we definitely want a skate park in Capitola, but we just want it in the right place. And we want to do it right. And no offense to what's been proposed here, but this is going to be continuous maintenance. The asphalt that is presented is going to be pitted with after one season of rain. You know, wood ramps don't last. We have them in our driveway. I know Skate Light was presented, and that lasts 5 years. It's very expensive to maintain. I mean, to keep this park going at McGregor, I don't agree with it. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Council. My name is Marie Martorella. I also am a resident and the parent of 2 kids that skateboard daily. And yeah, you know, Tricia and I definitely, you know, wrote down our thoughts together. So I definitely wanted to come up and just say that I agree with everything that she has asked and presented this evening. And yes, we are absolutely, I would say, 98% ready to present a complete package for an alternative spot. We want to do it right, and we want it to be thorough, and we want it to be something that we can all be very proud of. I definitely am a fan of doing better for our community and for our children. Safety is the #1 concern. You know, we talked about a 4-year design plan ultimately for, you know, safe access towards McGregor. I think that should be the first and foremost topic, not 4 years down the road. And while I think that given the constraints of the budget, you know, I understand where that design has come from, I don't think it's the best. And I don't think it's something that should be shined upon and looked upon as a very positive element. And I don't see that happening out there. So I also respectfully ask that you postpone for a short period of time anything further on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the microphone. I'm going to bring it back to council for further deliberation and possible action. Who would like to begin? Yes, Mike.
I applaud the staff for moving quickly on this. This is 10 years in the making. 9 of those years finding places where we couldn't put a skate park. But I was at that meeting, and I think that a lot of great ideas came forward. I just don't think we're ready to let this go. I'm not ready to accept the design. I think that because of the baseball game or because we didn't have enough time, we should wait a little bit, put this current design out to the public a little more in the next couple of weeks, hold another meeting, get more people in the room. There's no rush. I like the designer that was chosen. I think it was a good choice. And I would like to just delay this to at least our next meeting, if not the meeting after. We've waited this long. We can do this a little more methodically. And at the same time, I'd like to leave it to the council with regard to the other elements, the potential of concrete instead of wood, for the council to consider before that future meeting, possibly earmarking some CIP funds to backfill the Monty Foundation donation, because building it halfway, building it in a way that could become a future liability. We have a great public works department. I don't know that they're equipped at this stage to be the constant monitor of maintenance to a wooden ramp system. So if it needs to be concrete, it needs to have more money, so we need to contemplate that. So my inclination is to continue this item until there's more public input. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Yes, Stephanie.
I think that sounds good too, because I know this is a busy time of the year, and trying to get enough people to a meeting that so many people care about would be good to, I think, to continue this item and get everybody there that is interested, that's been here, and can give us their thoughts about it. So I think that's I think that's a good idea. And we may even want to wait until the first of the year. I mean, with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up and, you know, things like that, where people's attention is focused on other things, you know, maybe we can get them here to a meeting for the talk about skateboard, or if not, let's do it after the holidays, so whenever it's convenient.
Yeah. Dennis?
Mike can clarify this for me. Are you suggesting that we don't award the contract? That we don't go any farther with it?
Well, I'm concerned. I mean, I have no problem, you know, contracting this designer,
Okay.
because it's just the design phase we're talking about now. I'm not proposing that he does any more design, but I want to just get this design that has been done already out to the public more. So, you know, I just don't want to approve the contract in its entirety for the construction. I don't want to launch that off until we've had a chance to really, I mean, it's only been out in the public a week or two at best. So, you know, I don't want to miss it. And we've done it so many times where we've put something out, we think we've given it enough time, and then we award the contract, and a week later the podium is lined up with people going, why are you people trying to slip this by us? So I don't know. So maybe staff can tell us if we can approve, you know, this person for what's been done already and continue the vetting process.
Right, so what we have, what you can do is the contract, the scope of work is in 2 phases. So the phase 1 is the design phase, which would allow him to do more work. At this point, this was part of the proposal process, but now if you want any more work done, I would suggest approving the contract, but phase 1, which is the design, and phase 2, as per the contract, is construction and installation. And we can certainly wait on the construction and installation, but continue with the design.
Well, then I want to question the design because, you know, a full design has not been developed yet.
Right.
As much as I want to give a vote of confidence to this designer, if we have a couple of more public meetings and more things dramatically change, then we've designed without all the input. I'm looking for a little more input before we get the design finer. I know that some really great things were mentioned, like some more concrete out there, creating a circuit with a sidewalk-like appearance or curvature, sort of Derby Parkish, that kind of links the elements together. I'm learning more about skateboarding than I ever wanted to know, but it's important, and I'm getting an appreciation for it. That there are parks that have value that work.
And part of the design phase would allow him, if we approved at least that portion, because at this point this is all you get, and he would not, be attending any more meetings or anything, or putting any more work into it, unless
Did we stipulate that no further design takes place until we have a couple of more meetings? I don't want to go into the design redesign business and run the designer crazy until we see what the design is going to be.
Do you want staff to lead? That's the question, I guess, is would you prefer staff to be leading the design commenting period and have them lead that discussion, or would you rather have the professional lead that discussion?
I don't know if staff is any more well-versed than I may be with skateboarding.
Right,
but
so if you contract, then you'd have a professional.
I don't know. I guess more discussion, I suppose, Mr. Mayor.
Having a professional in the business on board, and we can't ask this guy to stick around for the next 3 months and redesign this thing for 4 times. We can't ask him to do that. What we can do is we can award the contract, and right now the contract's only at $50,000. We can award the contract. He has the basics, and just ask him not to go any farther with the design until the time that we we have another public, at least one more public meeting on this. Happens between now and the end of the year, and then we bring it back with probably a new council, but at the beginning of next year with a final design that time, giving more time for the public to give input. But I think the parameters have to be made real clear. Number one is we're talking about McGregor Lot. We're not talking about any place else right now. I mean, if something else comes up, fine. But this project and the design of this thing is only McGregor. Okay. Number two is that we need to have this a person with this expertise on board, or we won't get anywhere. We won't get anywhere. So we need to award him some type of contract that makes him stick around. Number one, and number two is that it gives a groundwork for the community to feedback both through staff and through him. And so I'll support your motion, Mike, under those terms. Is that
I don't want to release the construction portion tonight, as long as we know what we're approving. I have no problem having part of my motion be we are awarding this designer this contract. The design portion only at this time to be followed by approval, because I'm also looking at the fact that I don't want to approve a contract that may become a $100,000 contract, because we may decide to go concrete or more elements or whatever. So I don't want to fence this contract in. I have no problem getting this man under contract and get him to attend the meetings and do some preliminary sketching. I just don't want to.
Is that drawing to scale? Is that person to scale up there?
Yeah.
That's about right, yeah.
About 5-6 foot drop in the pipe.
Right.
5 foot drop.
I had a question concerning Mike's proposal about hiring this contractor to do the design phase only. If we were to do that, would he then be able to bid on the construction of the portions that he designed?
Well, I think depending on how we rework this contract, if that's what we're going to do, and we're just going to only award on the design phase, because this is how we put it out for the RFP, was for the whole design and construction. I mean, I think if the council can make that decision, we'll just do design and then we'll rebid the other part.
I'm not interested in holding back on. I don't want to see this go to bid again. This is our guy. I'm good with that.
Well, it sounds like we should improve the whole contract then.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I can shed a little bit of light on this. So the staff recommendation tonight is to approve the contract, to continue with the design process, to work to finalize and develop a final design and come back to the council for your review. And so we won't be moving into any construction of anything until the council authorizes the design.
And we don't
want if that takes more than one meeting with the council, that's fine. And if we wanted to change the contract amount, we can also, if we could talk about increasing it after we've awarded it, that can be done as well.
Mr. Mayor, the only scary part of what the city manager said is approve this design. I don't see this as the approved design.
No. I'm sorry, I misspoke if
That's
I
okay.
said that.
Okay. Not scared more than.
The recommendation tonight is not to approve a design. It's to direct staff to go back to work with this designer to authorize the contract, hold more community meetings, and then we'll bring back our next draft for your review.
Yeah. Okay. Ed, did you have some?
Question and clarification. Is it possible to have two contracts, one for design and one for construction? Do we need to award a contract? Because what I'm afraid of is if we award a design, I feel comfortable having designed them, but what if we decide not to build it? Is that allowed for us to do that? Or once we award this, do we have to perform on building something?
Council members, this is just a draft contract for your consideration tonight, and you can give direction. The actual action you'll be taking would be authorizing me to execute a contract. So if your direction is to have it as an optional element of the contract,
what I would feel comfortable with at this point, because there is so much uncertainty about what's going on, especially from people who are designing this, we don't even have a design yet, and we're getting ready to award a contract. Not really. I decided whether I even like the concept, so I would be not comfortable awarding a contract to build until we at least have some consensus about what we're looking at. There's not one thing up here that may stay. It may completely change. So what I'd rather see us do is just if there's a fee, I'm sure that the contractor can give us a fee breakdown of how much it costs to design and how much it costs to build, and if we had that.
You have that. In this contract right now, there's two phases.
Two pieces.
Phase one is the design phase, and that design cannot go further into construction until the council approves. So that final design would come to you for approval, and then we could proceed with, if the council wanted to proceed with construction, then it's phase two, is the construction installation is the second phase.
But we're not obligated for the $50,000 if we don't proceed to phase two.
My recommendation is if the council does not want to approve the construction at this time, that you direct staff to modify the contract to include that provision so that the city has the ability to to not proceed if you end up not approving.
So the second phase
design.
of the contract would say, pending council approval, if construction takes place, this is what it's for. Yeah.
The contract could be amended to say that.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
to amend it.
before I launch a motion, you have yet to speak, so I'm going to back off.
Let me just ask one question. If there are, let's assume we go with Phase 1 to design, if there are, because we've gone out to bid on this contract, if there are significant change orders through the design process, do we have to go back out to bid?
Well, this is being proposed as a consultant services contract, so I wouldn't necessarily think you have to go out to bid, but you would have to negotiate with the consultant. The consultant bid this as a package and may not feel the same way about doing the design for the proposed cost without the construction being a component of that.
So
from my understanding of the concerns that have been expressed, it's not necessarily with the final design, it's with the preliminary design and whether or not that concept is going to be the concept that the council ultimately approves. And if that's the case, it seems to me that you could approve the contract with the direction that the consultant will not be given notice to proceed unless and until a final design concept is agreed upon by the council after hearing additional public comment.
Mike, you want to make
I will move that we accept the contract for the design and that the proper language be inserted into the contract to not obligate us to build the skate park until it comes back to the council for consideration.
That's fine, and the council can approve that as such, but we will have to speak with the consultant to
work out the proper language. But you understand the intent of the motion and that
Yeah.
we want to put this person under contract. There's nothing in my motion that talks about sending it out to bid again or, not doing it. It's just we want to be more cautious in our rush to have a skate park as much as my desire is to rush to have a skate park.
We can certainly add that provision.
Great.
It should be made clear that he came to us as a design-build contractor. That's what he does. He designs something, he builds it. He doesn't design something, give it to someone else to build. It's not that kind of business.
Yeah.
So we went out to bid under the assumption that that's the type of person that we were going to hire. And I agree, Mike, and hopefully he'll agree, that we can separate these two to a point that if we decide not to build it, then the contract is for that. So I'll second that motion.
Why would we decide not to build it, though? Any thoughts about
No,
that? And that's
I
the
don't
first I've heard about that. I mean,
Well,
we've been trying to find a way to make this happen.
That was not the intent. My intent was more to get more community input and to have the council consider at a later date, and maybe every day until that date, their feelings about making this a little more robust project financially.
I just don't want to send a mixed message to the consultant because, we're not ready for the final design yet. We need to have more meetings, but I think we're making this too complicated.
No.
We just want more design,
Right.
more elements.
I think he gets
and
that, and
more meetings with the public, and we'll come back and we'll.
The strongest statement I can make is you're the first consultant I've ever liked, ever. Okay, so take that home. And everybody on this council understands that statement.
So is that motion clear and so forth?
Staff understands the direction. Okay. With that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 9B, which is the introduction of an ordinance regarding safety requirements for the McGregor Skate Park.
Can I just say one other thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If
go
we
ahead.
need to add anything to this contract for him to go to some more meetings, we should entertain that. If we want him to attend a couple more meetings with the public, and I think it's really important that he's there.
Yeah, we can leave that to staff. They can work
to
that
work
out.
that out in the contract, to get have some more time with the public to hear their concerns and incorporate those ideas
Right.
into it.
Yeah.
And so on item 9B, the recommended action is to approve the first reading of an ordinance. There always has to be 2 readings of the ordinance before it goes into effect, and this would be the first reading tonight. This would add Chapter 12.54 of the Capitola Municipal Code pertaining to the regulating skate parks on public property. Lisa.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we've already seen this image here before. So, as the mayor stated, skateboarding on public property, this will add a new chapter to our municipal code. Again, in anticipation, even though it may seem a little bit early, of the skate park installation, we need to adopt an ordinance that would regulate the use of the park in order to obtain specific immunities outlined in state law. And those immunities will limit the liability of cities to operate the municipal skate park. Oh, I forgot I had a little, yeah. So, I forgot. Let's see. So the purpose, again, is to comply with State of California Health and Safety Code. This is considered a hazardous recreational activity, and also to develop some local rules. So with regards to the state law, the requirements that we need to include, which we have into our ordinance, is the safety gear. More specifically, a helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads are required to be worn when you're in the park. We are also required to outline enforcement of those actions for not abiding by the rules. So we have first infraction, second infraction, thereafter infraction, $75. Also, the state law requires us to post the rules. So, of course, we will post these rules throughout the park. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I forget I had these little icons going in there. So, in terms of local rules, I worked with the city of Scotts Valley, and I talked with the city of Santa Cruz to help develop, so we really have a uniform sort of rules throughout the county. Riders under 10 must be with an adult. No food or beverages or glass bottles or breakable items in the park. You cannot bring your own additional obstacles or other materials into the park. No reckless behavior. At this point, I have in here skateboards and skates only. They're, again, brought up in the public meeting was the idea if bikes or scooters could be allowed, and at this point, I did not include that in here, although Scotts Valley does allow scooters. And then park closure, the ability to close the park if there vandalism or graffiti should occur, then the city manager or his designee could close the park for up to 72 hours. Oh, and that actually is pretty simple. That's all that I have for you. And again, trying to be consistent with the other skate parks through the county, it was my goal.
Yeah. Okay, Mike?
Question for Tony. You've seen this. We're covered?
Yeah.
Good. Curiosity question. Speaking of hazardous behavior, we have no signs posted on our beach, and yet people go out and surf all the time.
Different immunity.
Different kind of immunity?
Yeah.
We didn't build that.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Right, good.
Yeah. Natural condition of property.
Just a curiosity. Thank you. I have no other question.
Any other questions from council members on this? Yes, Dennis.
I hate these kind of things. I really do. We're setting rules before we have one kid out there to even experience it. But I think that maybe learning from the experience of Scotts Valley, what they have as rules. I don't know why, and maybe you can explain. Somebody will convince me that there shouldn't be scooters on this course. You know, they're the same as skateboards. They just got a handle. So that's one thing. The other one is, if you go to Scotts Valley's park, I think they remotely enforce the helmet issue, but you'll never see kids with knee pads and elbow pads. So are we creating another rule that's not enforceable? I mean, is that something we have to put? We're doing this because liability insurers tell us we have to do that? Or are we doing this because we really believe that we need to have that?
That is specifically outlined in the state law, which I attached to your staff report.
It is, okay. Okay. All right. Is this something that we need to approve right now, or is this something we could approve when we have the design?
It's your discretion, but I don't see a reason why not to adopt it.
It's not going to change in the next month. It's always going to. It's always going to indemnify us. So.
Well, I did want, on the question though of what kinds of skateboards or skates or scooters are going to be allowed on that, is to me that is part of the design conversation and with the community about the pros and cons and why not, and I think that public should have that conversation and then have that come back to us as to, well, what was the prevailing mood, what's about whether or not to do that or not do that. And so
my suggestion, I think it would be easier to add it in later if we wanted to. We found that the desire was there, although I really think it's going to be quite split in terms of bikes and scooters, that desire.
Yeah,
to
and I'm not, but
Yeah.
we've made separate accommodation for the bikes. So, so I mean, yeah, I mean, but still, I mean, whatever, it may be split, it may be hard to determine, we should just probably hear that and try to make our best judgment. I think if you're saying pass the first reading and then we can come back at the second reading, and if we wanted to then make some modifications based on the design meetings that take place and further input, is that a possibility?
I believe that's, yes, I do. And I think that would continue to be a point of discussion amongst the folks that show up.
Okay.
Can we hold the second reading then until the time that we have a design coming before us?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't. Is that right?
We'll come back for the
Yeah,
second,
and Mr. Mayor, it's been my observation, speaking with skaters, scooter people, bike people, that these parks are very much user policed as far as, you know, the soft rules, you know, the latitude of, sometimes there's bikes there, sometimes there's scooters there, and they pretty much handle themselves. And I've also observed, it makes me feel a little better about having a skate park, is that they actually police poorly planned behavior themselves. You know, skaters will say, you know, you're not, it's not happening for you here. You know, you're putting us all in danger or what have you. So
You think there's a pecking order there?
it's not so much a pecking order, but it's all skaters want skateboard parks to remain open and vibrant and viable, and that's the core of it. So if someone is doing something off the wall and something that would cause perhaps some problems at the skate park, believe me, they're spoken to. Less to do with scooters and bikes, more to do with just conduct in general. The more I learn about skate parks, the more I observe them, the more I appreciate the users and how much they love their skate park and keep it straight and square.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Mike, that, yeah, it's really going to be the users that are going to create the culture and to create, you know, the compliance, you know, with the rules so that we can, you know, retain, you know, the skate park. I did have a couple of questions, though, about the list of prohibitions. I noticed it doesn't prohibit any kind of vandalism or graffiti. Maybe that's a separate ordinance. It states consequences if it should occur, which is a park closure, which seems to be, it's kind of one of those punishing everyone for the acts of one or two. Would it be appropriate to put in there as a prohibition that any kind of vandalism or graffiti is also, I mean, subject to a fine, an individual fine, or is that handled under a separate ordinance?
I think vandalism graffiti is handled under a separate ordinance, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
You know, and I checked with Scotts Valley again about their rule regarding this, and at the beginning they did find that they closed the park. I think the city manager said twice, and they haven't closed it in a very long time. They have not, you know, the first time you do it, that's it. Then it doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to happen again.
mm-hmm. Okay. And about, we've already banned smoking on all public properties, so we don't need to restate that, but that would be enforced as well.
All public parks.
At all public parks,
Right.
so banned. Okay, good. I think, was there any, well, I guess actually I should go out to see if, are there any members of the public that would like to talk about skate park rules? Like them the way they are? Okay. Yes, please.
I just wanted to give the bikers a vote of confidence. I think that they should be allowed to ride as well. They're not at the Santa Cruz downtown park, and once in a while, one or two will come in and ride anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost creates, from the skater's perspective, an excuse to to pick on them or bully them or throw them out, like, hey, you're not allowed here, that sort of thing. And I've lived in a neighborhood where there was a public park that allowed everybody to ride, and it's like Mike mentioned, they kind of figured out which way everyone's going to go. There's certain paths of travel, and I think it's kind of inspiring to see everybody getting along and having fun in a place, and I don't think it's nice to exclude anybody. That's my view as a skater.
No, I mean, I think that's a good point about inclusiveness. And maybe that can be discussed at these design settings, and we can, and the council can consider.
If I may, I would like to comment on that briefly. We could certainly look into that further, but as I was looking at the health and safety code section that's referenced in your staff report, first of all, the immunity that we're seeking to avail the city of is for hazardous recreational activities. And the health and safety code section basically says that if you comply with these requirements, then skateboarding at that facility would be considered a hazardous recreational activity for which the city would be immune from liability. But the statute specifically says that the public entity that would apply is for skateboarding at that facility. It does not reference any sort of recreational activity that occurs therein. So we could research that further, but as I look at the statute, it would not appear to protect the city from activities other than skateboarding at that facility.
Then maybe that's something that can be researched for when it comes back for the second reading in a month or two.
Like I said, we could look into it further, but just based on this alone, I'm concerned about
Well, that's a good heads up to everyone, and maybe we should consider that as this all comes back to us at the second reading. So, any other members of the public like to address us? Yes.
I wanted to know, oh, that's so loud, sorry, regarding the helmets, elbow pads, and knee pads. So I don't believe they actually enforce that in Scotts Valley. I believe you have to have a helmet. I'm talking more specifically the elbow and the knee pads. What I'm wondering is if there's would local government be able to have flexibility on what they're enforcing? I know that sounds silly to be able to selectively enforce the law, but I do know Scotts Valley doesn't enforce that piece. So I'm just wondering, I don't think that they would be meaning to break the state law. I'm just wondering if there is some flexibility. I know, I believe at Cunningham, you have to check in to get into that skate park. That's a large park over the hill. And you actually can't get in the park without your elbow pads, your knee pads, and your helmet. We're not going to have that here, so I'm just throwing it out there. I know they'll absolutely wear a helmet. I think the padding, gets a little, you might get some grumbling. The other thing I was going to just mention about the scooters, the bikes, and the skateboards, all, like for instance, on the half pipe, it's one at a time use. It's not going to be a cohesive going from one element to the other out there. I'm wondering how that would be feasible to, wait for the skateboarder to be done and then have a scooter, shooting down the half pipe, and then a bike, because there's no easy way to really access the current design. You got to go up the stairs and then down the ramp. I don't know that this design necessarily creates the flow necessary to have all three of those elements going at the same time.
All right, thank you. Well, I think those were some interesting questions that the staff could maybe note and to discuss and bring back to the council at the next meeting.
I'd like to move the first reading with the note that the police are more likely to give a ticket for a sandwich board sign than they are for knee pads. So that's all I have to say about that.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Because of the nature of skate parks over the past year, I've spent a lot of time driving by Sky Park and other parks in Santa Cruz. Just want to reaffirm a couple of comments that were made by people. there's not a lot of helmets being worn, and there's even less knee pads and elbow pads. So let's be clear about that. The reason we make that law is to protect our liability. That's not the only reason we're doing it. So if you're worried about that being enforced, I agree with the comment that was just made about sandwich signs. That'll happen first. With that being said, the other valid point that was made is that in the Sky Park, which has a lot of square footage, the scooters are able to intermingle with the skateboarders because there is ample room, and I don't see that in this design. And what we have to remember is this is a temporary skate park that we're designing, and there's only a few elements there. And if there were probably more than 6 or 8 people in that park, you'd have total congestion, the one that we're talking about. So I don't want to single out bikers or scooters. I'm not against them. It's just I don't believe that, from what I've seen, that what seems to operate safely and smoothly at Scotts Valley, this venue is going to afford anything other than skateboarders. So I think to protect our interests legally and otherwise, just limiting it to skateboarders and posting the signs that display the rules is all we're going to be able to do. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously, which will bring us to item 9C, which is a presentation regarding a potential Santa Cruz Regional Public Libraries funding measure. The recommended action is to receive the update regarding the bond measure and to provide direction. So can we have a staff report?
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. This is an update regarding the regional funding measure for a library facilities bond. Your council will recall that in 2013, the library JPA, Regional Library Service Provider, completed a facilities master plan that identified more than $80 million in needed repairs, replacements to various undersized and outdated facilities within our regional library system to really bring those libraries up to modern standards and provide modern library services to our communities. The estimates based on that report, as well as a needs assessment that the city of Capitola completed for itself, calls for a need of around 12,000 to 15,000 square foot new library in Capitola. As the council will recall, the city is already under contract to build a new library in our community, contract with the county of Santa Cruz. That contract calls for a 7,000 square foot library, and to that end, the city has set aside $2.6 million in former redevelopment agency funding for that project. There's been interest in finding a regional funding source to bring up all these regional libraries up to the highest quality standards for our community. The cost estimates that were originally developed in the facilities master plan have been refined such that we're talking about we believe that all the projects that are identified there could be done between $60 and $70 million in that range. And based on some initial polling, it appears that there could be community support for a regional measure that would generate something in the order of $61 million net available for library improvements. The initial cost estimates for a branch that's in the size range that's discussed in the facilities master plan is $11.5 million for the Capitola branch. That estimate of $11.5 million does not include the costs for any additional land acquisition or temporary facilities should we need them. But one of the challenges, as you can imagine, with an effort like this has been to try to find an equitable distribution of funding among the various partners, which include the City of Capitola, City of Scotts Valley, the County of Santa Cruz, and the City of Santa Cruz, how to divvy up a regional distribution of funds to provide services like this that we do regionally. These are the numbers that have been developed and presented to the Library JPA Board. The numbers in the Facilities Master Plan, they were presented in February to the JPA Board, in July to the JPA Board, and then most recently in September. You can see sort of some evolution of some of the numbers, and really one of the big challenges is how to deal with the situation in Live Oak and Scotts Valley, both of which have relatively new libraries, and how to develop an equitable distribution of funds that really addresses the needs that we have at some of our libraries, and at the same time is inclusive of all partners. So you'll see, for example, in the February board packet, the numbers in Scotts Valley changed significantly to up to $5.8 million, and the Live Oak number was much higher. It has been lower in the more recent proposals, but that has led to some difficult negotiations. And really the purpose of tonight is, as staff, when I have been talking to the other regional administrators, my position has been that Capitola is willing to consider reductions off of the amounts that have been specified previously, to the extent that we're part of a regional solution to find an equitable distribution. But my position has been that if really what we're doing is dropping Capitola's distribution of this, while other jurisdictions all increase, that wouldn't be a successful outcome for Capitola. So, number one, I wanted to brief the council. Councilmember Termini also asked for this item on the agenda, so he may have some thoughts as your library JPA board representative, and really get feedback about how we approach these things, and what kind of position the city council as a whole would give to staff and to Councilmember Termini as your JPA board representative as we move forward. So with that, I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Other questions? Seeing none, I will ask if there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item. This is concerning the potential public financing bond measure and the Capitola's proposed allocation.
And I would also like to note that Teresa Landers, our library director, is here as well, if you do have specific questions for Teresa.
Perhaps I should, give you a little background on why I brought this, because we so rarely, as members of various county bodies, we very rarely come to the council and say, what do you think? You appoint us because we use our best judgment. We represent Capitola favorably. And what I started to see was a disturbing trend to recommend not only that Capitola get less and less money, where everyone else was pretty much staying the same or going up, but also Capitola's initial recommendation of 12 to 15,000 square feet in one of the first iteration of the facilities plan, and now we're talking about 10,000 square feet. So, although I try and approach the library board as a member of the community who is looking for the interest of the entire library system, and I'm always looking that way. I'm not so parochial that I want to damage one part of our system just to benefit ourselves. I also represent Capitola. So in view of this, I wanted some direction on how firm you'd like me to stand. And this is not an approval of a bond tonight. This is just one of your representatives asking for some direction as a representative of the city of Capitola on this county board. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Gorson. I'm a Capitola resident, and I was formerly on the library board and chair of the library board, and I'm on the current ad hoc library committee. So I have lots of opinions about this. I just have 3 points to make. The first one is time is of the essence here. We're on a very tight timeline to actually get this on the ballot in June. If we don't get it on the ballot in June, costs increase, so our whole community will suffer if it eventually passes, because we'll get an amount of money that will now buy us less. So I would urge the direction to be I know everybody's motivated to get it done, but get it done sooner rather than later, because if we miss this opportunity, we've done a big disservice to our whole community, not just Capitola. Secondly, the library facilities bond, which is really a tax measure, and the distribution of funds, I believe, should be pretty directly tied to that library facilities master plan. The library board did pass that, and when you look at the numbers that are shown, when I look at the various JPA board packets, it looks to me like the July board packet was reasonably close to meeting the facility master plan estimates. And, you know, there's certainly some concessions that could be made by various branches, but it was reasonably close to that in my mind. And the difference between the July and the September is that the 2.1 million issuance costs had to come out of the facility's construction budgets. And it seems to me, in looking at the Capitola line item, an inordinate amount came out of Capitola. I don't understand why that would be. So one of my opinions is that we would want to push back on that a bit, and maybe we take a little more than other branches, certainly. But it would seem reasonable to allocate it based sort of proportionally on what the branches' budgets are. And last, and I know I'm running out of time, is to just keep in mind that Capitola is really a regional branch, not by design, but just by the way it functions. And so residents of Live Oak and residents of SoCal and Aptos use the Capitola branch hugely and will continue to use it even more once there's a new facility. So I do think that Supervisor Leopold and Supervisor Friend, I would look to them for their support for Capitola because their constituents benefit. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right,
Mr.
thank you,
Mayor,
Barbara. Yes,
one more
ma'am.
point that would help the council before the next speaker comes up, and that is there is rhetoric taking place at this time which speaks to our 2.6 million being deducted from the 10.5. And that's what started to scare me even more. So just for your consideration.
Mike, has there been discussion about, hi Teresa, about where that 2.6 would fall within these allocations?
Million here, million there.
So they would be dispersed among the other jurisdictions, not any particular? Okay.
No, I think Councilmember Termini was suggesting that the 2.6 could, in some proposals that have been circulated, could come off the top of Capitola's allocation here, so that the Capitola allocation in the bond would go down to 8 million, and then we'd use our 2.6 million to help augment that. One of the challenges with the redevelopment, the funding, I think I mentioned one of them during my presentation, is that if we are talking about a facility at the size that we've been discussing, somewhere around 12 or 13,000 square feet, the current site has some challenges in terms of accommodating a facility of that size, the open space we'd like to see in the parking. So land acquisitions become part of the conversation, I think, on that site. In addition, you'll recall that our library subcommittee was looking at two sites, both there as well as somewhere on this property. They're recommending that site. The council hasn't yet weighed in on that topic, but if we're talking about this site, other challenges with those redevelopment agency dollars come into play, and there could be some limitations on their availability for use in the facility. So regardless, I'm not 100% comfortable in telling you that the 2.6 million really can come off the top, because I think that we're going to be faced with other costs.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes, hi, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa Landers, Library Director. I wanted to make one clarification on the September figures as opposed to the July figures. At the end of July, we had a study session with the consultant who did the facilities master plan, and after that, we sat down and did some revision of numbers. We met with some community people that are in the construction industry, and there were some costs that were reduced. So the July and September figures are the same size library for Capitola. It's just that it's less expensive. You'll notice downtown also came down in September. That's because we made some adjustments, particularly in soft costs. So that's why the number's lower. There's really no size taken away from Capitola between July and September. The other issue is that I just lost my train of thought because it's late. Capitola is on the cusp. About $10 million is where they said if you might be able to get a slightly larger building for the $10 million, because it's kind of about 10 or 11,000 square feet. Your price per square footage is almost the same at 11,000 square feet as it is for 10,000 square feet, because you've crossed some boundary, and Dennis, you may be able to speak to this better than I can, but that in terms of the cost per square footage, you may be able to get more. So we probably can get a larger size Capitola library at the 10.5 million, but they did it in a conservative way. But I do want to assure you that the July and September figures are the same size for Capitola. Yes, smaller than you thought originally, but it's still the same size.
It's not the same size. The facilities master plan says 12 to 15. I did not see the 10,000 or the 10,000 square foot number come out until later, until we needed to calculate bond costs. So I'm seeing us as the only library between the facilities master plan and the most recent as shrinking. I know that the concept of shrinking Felton came out at our October meeting, and to say that the Felton folks were concerned is an understatement.
Well, you're right, it did get smaller than when it was originally given, trying to make the dollars fit, but from July to September, the size didn't change.
Did anyone else get smaller?
Get smaller? Well, downtown got reduced. It's not getting bigger in the first place. But from July to September, downtown also went down by almost $1 million. So.
Okay, thank you, Teresa, for that clarification. Any other member of the public wish to address the council on this item?
Evening, Member Story, council members, staff. I'm Gail Ortiz. I've been on the JPA in the past. I'm on the current ad hoc committee. I've been on other library committees for Capitola. I want to reiterate what Barbara Gorson says. We need to always really keep in mind that this is not the Capitola Library. This is the Capitola Branch Library. It's the branch of a larger system, and it's one of the critical mid-county branches that we've got, Aptos being the other. We may be in control of a lot of the issues about this library, but we need to remember that it's used just as much or more by people who don't live in Capitola. And we owe the people of the larger community to stay open-minded about this and take the higher ground and take the larger ground on this. I would really like to see Capitola take the lead in taking the bigger picture on this. And if it means that we need to reduce it a little bit, I'd like to see us take the high ground, but not to the extent that we get, a lot less. But please do us this favor. Keep reminding the public at large that this is not the Capitola Library. It's the Capitola Branch. It just happens to be in Capitola. So it's a critical factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Any other speakers this evening? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comments portion of this agenda item. I'll bring it back to council members. Yes, Stephanie.
One thing that makes me a little nervous is talking about a bigger branch over on that same site, because if we needed more parking for a bigger branch, we don't have any room for it. And if it would mean, buying the house next door, that's a big step. So I think we need to be really, really careful about this and not think too big, not think bigger than our pocketbook. And, we may find some creative solutions around that, but we just need to be really careful. The previous drawings that we have for a two-story building on there included parking, and we talked about parking on the Rispin site, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit more and see if we can get anything over there. I don't know. But it's exciting. It's exciting for everybody to be talking about improvements to the library and for us to have a bigger library. I'm so proud of us that we saved that $2 million. And we thought that was going to be enough, and we'll see what we get in this round of things.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yes, Dennis.
I have a couple questions. I'd like to talk about fairness on this process. What % of the library budget comes from sales tax?
About half.
Half of the budget? Okay.
Roughly.
Okay. And if we are talking about a Capitola library, that obviously per population we're a major contributor in sales tax in this county. And so we're putting a good fair money into that process there. The other thing is that if I remember correctly, the existing Capitola library was paid for exclusively by the city of Capitola. It was not even a facility until it was completed, then it was turned over to the library system. So in the past, our direction had been is that the city produced its library and then turned it over to it. And then we watched as Live Oak produced a wonderful library where it is right now. And if I'm not mistaken, the majority of that library there was funded through the library system.
Or RDA.
RDA, okay. Okay. So in talking fairness to the people of Capitola, that our contributions have been fairly high in this library system and have asked for very little of the library system to this point for a number of years. And I think it goes back at least 18 years, I think, ago we built that library. Am I correct on that? Somewhere right in that range, maybe. Stephanie, remember that?
10. Isn't it 10 years? Teresa
No,
would
it
know.
was when Margaret was here. Yeah. 1990. Thank you, Johnny. Institutional history there. That in talking fairness, I think Capitola his turn has come, and that we deserve to have a first-rate library of a size that fits our community, and that we shouldn't be shortchanged by money moving to different areas of the county that have already reaped some benefit in the past of having adequate library facilities, and not shortcoming anybody, but Capitola deserves a good library, and so I'm kind of following with you, Mike, whatever your lead is on this thing, and we've asked you to be our representative, and if you feel that the direction you're taking is the right one, I'm going to support that. Okay. Ed?
Yeah, I'm only been in this town for a short time. 5 years is a very short time, but in that short time, one thing I've learned is the people in this town are very possessive of what they have and own. I understand that it's a regional library, but it's been a long time waiting for people to have their Capitola library, what they envision that is. And I'll be frank, I'm not sure what that is. If we should keep an open mind about anything, it's about what that final conception is going to look like, and also where it's going to be, where it's going to work best in this community. And I really challenge people to just look outside from their preconceived notions and think about down the road as we think about a master plan and how things are going to evolve, like the rail trail and other projects in this city. You know, where's the best place to have the kind of library, the size we want, and the quality we want. So my direction to you is I'm supporting your gut feeling. I look at some numbers up there. I don't need to mention the specific places. I see some numbers that are unchanged, and ours is significantly changed. So I don't think that's fair. That's my point.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I served on the library board for a number of years. I was president of the library board. I was there during the discussions of possibly closing some of the branches, and I think we fought hard at the time to preserve the 10-branch system, and we successfully did that. And so I have a lot of opinions about the library as well. I did want to give a heads up to all the candidates. I know that there's candidates in the audience this evening. I'm going to tell you, this is one of the most thorniest issues that you're going to deal with, whichever ones of you get elected. You really need to study this issue, because there's a lot going on other than just the allocation of these facilities, the bond measure from the library facilities. That's just part of it. The actual joint powers agreement is expiring in 2017, and I think there's serious questions as to whether or not that's going to be renewed by all the jurisdictions, and if it does, in what manner it will be renewed. I think that those are important issues that need to be dealt with before I think the public is going to even approve a bond measure. And so I think the candidates, and I would encourage all the council to be very informed and up to the date on those questions. I think before talking about an allocation of public funding, I think you have to talk about the likelihood of it passing and the purpose of it and the integrity of it. And to me, that's the key thing, because if it's not approved because the public doesn't like what they're seeing and what's going on, then we're just grasping at straws up here to talk about dividing up this money. I think that, as Barbara Gorson mentioned, the library's master plan should be the guiding principle that's used to determine how much is requested in total bond monies and then how it will be allocated. That is kind of the measure of what was determined to be the fair amount of money for the much needed Capitola Branch Library. You know, I think that there's really two big holes in facilities in our system here. One is in Felton, which needs to have a brand new library, and I think the other is in Capitola. And there should be focus on the Joint Powers Board to bringing up those facilities. And I don't, at the same time, Mike, I mean, first of all, on the question of deducting our RDA money from this bond measure, I think that we should certainly stand firm against that. Those are two separate things. You know, we in good faith raise that money. We in good faith are going to be moving to help support and have this bond measure passed. I think that the Capitola should get its fair piece out of the facilities master plan and the funding bond, not with regard to the RDA money that we paid in for years and years. So I think that that's one principle that you should stand on, and I hope the other council members would agree with that. I think the other is, to me, it's not about, you know, fighting over, well, it should be 9.5, 10 million, 10.5, or 11. I think the fundamental question is, where is that money going? Is it being used within the library system? Or is it being diverted for other purposes which are going to, I think, degrade the integrity of the bonding process and the public vote, and therefore not likely to be approved? I think that should be the ultimate measure of whether or not, of how much money we insist upon. I think if it's all going toward the system that we currently have, upgrading, you know, the branches that we currently have, then I think it's a good measure. I think the public will support it. If it's just being diverted and our amount is being reduced because of that, I think that we should stand up to that, because in my view, it will not be approved in any event. And we should try to, I think, walk that line. So I guess those are my thoughts, and hopefully that provides some guidance for you, Mike. I don't know if you need, I don't know if there's a uniform consensus up here, or whether you need one.
I didn't need a motion or action,
Okay.
or, you know, I get the sense, and to be sure, I always take the high road, especially with the library. It is a system. We are part of the entire body, and yet when I started to hear about the RDA money being deducted, and I saw everyone else going down or getting considerably higher than you see on the September report, you know, with Central at 28 and Live Oak at 5 and Scotts Valley at 3, I just started to shake my head and say, no one is moving in the same direction as us by $1, and we are, you know, bearing this burden alone between ourselves and increasing the bond amount to a dangerous level. So I got the message. I appreciate your support, and I will carry on.
All right. Thank you. And thanks for everyone for coming here this evening and speaking to us on this, which I think is a very important topic, and it may determine the you know, the destiny of our library system here in Santa Cruz County. So with that, that will bring us now to item 9D, which is to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 1710 to the City Municipal Code, which is the Green Building Ordinance, and we'll go to the first reading. The recommended action is to amend the Green Building Fund so that it can be used for stormwater protection, climate action planning purposes. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the introduction. As you recall, the Green Building Ordinance was adopted by the City Council in May 2008, and the stated reasons for doing so were to promote sustainable development and improve energy efficiency in Capitola. Green building regulations apply to any non-residential additions and or exterior remodels which are 1,000 square feet or greater, as well as residential additions or remodels which are 350 square feet or greater. As part of the Green Building Ordinance, the Council established a Green Building Education Fund. So projects that are subject to the Green Building Ordinance are assessed a 0.25% fee on the total building valuation. Those funds currently may only be used for program management, training, and public education strictly related to green building programs. Due to those restrictions, it's been difficult to spend the monies over the years. The fund currently has about $122,000, and on average, we accumulate about $21,000 per year into the fund. There's a number of projects and programs that the city is embarking on that are going to require substantial investment. Chief amongst those are the Climate Action Plan. We also have a lot of water quality and stormwater pollution prevention programs that we've been working on, as well as water conservation initiatives given the severity of the recent drought. So our proposal this evening would be to broaden the allowances for using the Green Building Education Funds. We had proposed that we retitle it to allow it to be used for climate action plans, stormwater, and water conservation type purposes. You may recall one good example would be a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we talked about the Rain Barrel program. The council was interested in subsidizing that to make it more attractive for residents. Had this been in place at the time, there would have been a funding source that we could have dipped into for that. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly available for any questions. Thank you.
Rich, I have an out-of-the-box contemplation about green building ordinance, being in building and being a lead individual. We should give perhaps some thought, not tonight, but in the future, about our green building fees starting at a certain level and being reduced the more they comply. You know, we may be thinking about this in a backwards fashion. I'd like to try to reward people who build a more sustainable dwelling as opposed to penalize them by being in the green building program. I think we've come to the point in the community where everyone is in the green building program if you're building, period. The more sustainable you make your building, the more your fees should go down. So just a consideration.
I agree. You know, and the climate action plan that we're starting to put together, the Commission on the Environment is currently looking at it, and there's a lot of proposals in there to provide incentive programs for residents to go more green with their building, to conserve water. Those funds would certainly be available. And as we move forward with that, I'm going to strongly try to push us into an incentive-based program rather than a penalty-based program. I think it'll work much better that way. So that was really the genesis of the idea of trying to broaden this funding source, was so that those monies would be available. The other thing I should note too is it would have the same contracting rules than anything else that we do here. So any expenditure of $25,000 or more, we'd have to present it to the City Council. And I expect that almost any program or project that we propose to use this money for, we would make you certainly aware of it before we just went on a spending spree.
Another question for you. Has the Commission on the Environment weighed in on this?
Monday.
Okay.
This Monday. They've had it for about 4 or 5 weeks, the Climate Action Plan piece.
Right.
And we'll get some feedback from them this coming Monday.
But it seems to be on a pretty positive, and this is a...
I think overall, I think
good.
they're in support of the idea. You know, from my perspective, the measures do cost money. You know, they're going to require city resources, whether it be staff time or investments. So we're really trying to find carbon reduction measures to give us the most bang for the buck.
Good.
That don't, you know, burden the city, but, you know, to have some positive results.
Great. Thanks.
Dennis?
Rich, since this is regulated as a green building fee when people come in, are we going to have some accountability to where we're spending the money on this? Is this going to be a separate account?
Yes, it's currently a separate account. We keep those monies separate from the general fund and any other funding so we can track it. And, you know, we haven't spent a lot of it over the last 6 years.
Another question. There's actually 2 different green building ordinances out there. One of them is the state of California, 2013. Then there's the one that the city of Santa Cruz has. Which one are we adapting? Which one are we going to go to?
Well, that's ultimately going to be a city council decision. You know, depending on the type of measures we propose with the climate action plan, we might ramp it up to something similar to the city of Santa Cruz. Ideally, what I'd like to do is create a menu of different items that we can implement to achieve our carbon reduction goals, so that we're not tied to any one of them necessarily, but that we can select, say, maybe 7 out of a list of 15, and we'd meet our target.
So as long as we exceed the state standards, we can create anything we would like within the green building ordinance? Is that
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? None? None? Any member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Come on up here then.
I'll move to amend the green building ordinance.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. With that, that brings us to the adjournment, and I want to adjourn once again in honor of District Attorney Bob Lee. I will adjourn us to the next regular scheduled meeting of the Capitola City Council on Thursday, November 13th at 7 p.m. in these City Hall chambers. And good night, Capitola.